They thought fear would make her small. They thought a blade across fabric would break her will. They were wrong about everything. Asterisk, what city are you watching from today? If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe for more real stories about extraordinary people. She stood in the corridor with her back straight and her eyes forward, a junior uniform on her shoulders and a calm that unsettled the men circling her. The base was loud with routine, but around her, the air felt tight. Someone laughed. Someone else stepped closer. And the mistake they were about to make would follow them for the rest of their lives. Her name was Maya Cole. On paper, she was a logistics specialist, newly assigned, quiet, unremarkable. She moved crates, checked manifests, and spoke only when spoken to. That was the story she let people see. It was the story she needed them to believe. Maya had learned early that attention was dangerous. She had learned to fold herself into the background, to let others underestimate her. The uniform she wore was plain by design, stripped of anything that might hint at the truth. No patches that told stories. No medals that raised questions. Just fabric and rank that invited dismissal. The men who noticed her that afternoon were not supposed to be there. They were visiting contractors with inflated confidence and borrowed authority, the kind that mistook proximity for power. They blocked her path near the maintenance wing, where the cameras blinked and the hall narrowed. One of them looked her up and down and smirked. He asked her name like it was a challenge. She gave it evenly. Another leaned close and told her she was in the wrong place. She said she was exactly where she was assigned. That answer did not sit well with them. They joked about teaching her a lesson, about how rules bent when no one important was watching. Maya felt the familiar pressure in her chest, not fear, but calculation. She took note of distances, angles, exits. She felt the floor through her boots and measured the weight of the air. When the first hand grabbed her sleeve, she did not flinch. When the second hand produced a knife and slid it along the seam of her jacket, cutting cloth instead of skin, the laughter rose. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to see her fold. The blade nicked the uniform, a deliberate insult. Fabric tore. Threads fell. One of them said she should remember her. Place. Maya breathed once. Slow. Centered. She had spent years learning how moments like this end. She had trained for chaos, for close quarters, for the second when choice becomes action. She had been taught that restraint is a skill, and that violence is a last resort. She had also been taught that when the line is crossed, speed saves lives. The knife hand came back higher this time. That was the line. Maya moved. It was not dramatic. There was no wind-up, no shout. One step inside the attacker's balance, a turn of the wrist, a shift of weight. The knife was gone, pinned against the wall by its own momentum. The man gasped, surprised by the sudden absence of control. Before the others could react, she flowed through them, redirecting force, taking space, breaking their rhythm. A shoulder dropped. An elbow locked. A heel swept. Bodies met the floor in a sequence too fast to track, a chain of cause and effect that left no room for panic. The last man froze, staring at his empty hands and the precision in her eyes. He raised his palms without thinking, surrender written into his posture. Maya stepped back and released the first man's wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. Silence rushed in to fill the gap where bravado had been. She adjusted her torn sleeve, as if embarrassed by the damage. Her voice was steady when she spoke. She told them to sit and stay still. They obeyed. Footsteps approached from the far end of the corridor. 2 military police officers rounded the corner and stopped short at the scene. 3 men on the floor, one against the wall, pale and shaking. A young specialist standing calm in the center. The officers asked what happened. Maya answered simply. She said her uniform was damaged. She said she defended herself. She said she would cooperate fully. The men tried to talk over her, voices overlapping with excuses and accusations. One pointed at her and claimed she attacked without warning. Another said she had no right. The officers looked at the knife on the floor. They looked at the torn fabric. They asked for identification. Maya handed over her card. The officer glanced at it and frowned. He checked it again. Then he stood a little straighter and spoke into his radio. Minutes later, the corridor filled with quiet authority. A senior officer arrived, followed by someone whose presence shifted the temperature of the room. He wore a uniform that carried weight without effort. His eyes were sharp, assessing, familiar with truth and lies. He asked Maya to step forward. She did. She stood at attention, posture precise, chin level. He looked at her torn sleeve, then at the men on the floor. He asked one question. Softly. Maya answered with respect and brevity. The officer nodded once. Then he turned to the others and asked for their accounts. Their stories unraveled under scrutiny, threads pulled loose by facts and timestamps and the calm certainty in the room. The officer dismissed them with a glance and addressed the military police. His instructions were clear. As the men were escorted away, one of them looked back at Maya with disbelief. He shook his head and muttered that she was the wrong person to mess with. The officer waited until the corridor was empty. Then his expression softened, just a little. He told Maya she handled herself with restraint. He told her the report would reflect that. He told her to replace the uniform and return to duty when ready. Before she could step away, he added one more thing. He said the team would be proud. Maya nodded. She felt the familiar pull to disappear back into the work that kept her grounded. She did not seek recognition. She sought balance. Later that evening, she sat alone and stitched the seam where the blade had cut. Her hands moved with the patience of someone who understands repair. Fabric came together. Damage became a line only she would notice. Maya thought about the choice she made to move when she did. About how power often mistakes silence for weakness. About how skill does not need an audience. She knew the truth of who she was would surface again someday. It always did. Until then, she would keep doing the work, keeping others safe without needing to be seen. Because strength is not loud. It is not cruel. It does not prove itself by cutting others down. It waits, prepares, and acts only when it must. What did this story make you feel? Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more real stories that heal the heart.